The air was thick with the stench of sweat and fear as the crowd of teenagers closed in, their laughter sharp like knives. In the center of the circle, a girl stood alone, her worn boots sinking into the muddy field. Her hands trembled, but her eyes burned with something fierce, something dangerous. "You think you're tough, farm girl," one of the boys sneered, stepping closer, his voice dripping with venom. The others howled, their taunts echoing across the empty lot. But then, in a heartbeat, the girl's lips curled into a smile that sent a chill through the air. Seconds later, the bully's laughter turned to screams. What had she done? How had this quiet, overlooked girl turned the tables so fast? Stick around, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell for more unbelievable stories like this one, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Her name was Ellie Carter, a 16-year-old with dirt under her nails and dreams too big for the small town of Willow Creek. Born on a struggling dairy farm, Ellie had grown up wrestling hay bales, fixing broken fences, and milking cows before dawn. Her hands were calloused, her shoulders strong, but to the kids at Willow Creek High, she was just the farm girl, a target for their cruelty. Every day she walked the halls with her head down, her auburn braids swinging, trying to ignore the whispers. "She smells like a barn," they'd say, loud enough for her to hear. "Bet she sleeps with the cows." The leader of the pack was Mason Reed, the star quarterback with a smile that charmed teachers and a heart as cold as the winter wind. He'd made it his mission to make Ellie's life hell since freshman year when she dared to outscore him on a math test. "Know your place, farm girl," he'd hissed, shoving her books to the floor. The memory still stung, but Ellie had learned to swallow the pain, to keep moving forward. She had to, for her family, for the farm, for herself. But today was different. It was a crisp October afternoon, the kind where the sky burned orange and the air carried a bite. School had let out, and Ellie was cutting through the empty lot behind the football field, her shortcut home. She'd stayed late to finish a chemistry project, her only escape from the farm's endless chores. Her backpack sagged with books, and her boots crunched against the gravel. That's when she heard them. Footsteps, too many, too close. Her stomach twisted. She didn't need to turn around to know it was Mason and his crew. Tyler, the wiry kid with a cruel laugh, Becca, the cheerleader who wielded her popularity like a weapon, and Jake, the quiet one who followed Mason like a shadow. "Hey, farm girl." Mason's voice cut through the air, sharp and mocking. "Where are you running off to?" "Gotta go milk your boyfriend, Bessie." The others laughed, their voices blending into a wall of noise that made Ellie's chest tighten. She kept walking, her pace quickening, but the footsteps followed. What would you have done in her shoes? Keep walking, or turn and face them. Comment below, because Ellie was about to make a choice that would change everything. The lot was a barren stretch of dirt and weeds, bordered by a sagging chain, link fence, and the distant hum of the highway. No teachers, no witnesses, just Ellie and the wolves circling her. She could feel their eyes on her back, their laughter growing louder, closer. "Come on, Ellie," Becca called, her voice syrupy with fake sweetness. "Don't be shy. Show us how you shovel manure." The group erupted again, and Ellie's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to run, to disappear, but her legs felt heavy, rooted to the ground. Then she heard the clink of a bottle, glass, heavy, probably stolen from someone's dad's liquor cabinet. "Bet she's never even had a drink," Tyler said, his voice slurring slightly. "Let's give her a taste." Ellie's heart pounded. She turned just enough to see them. Mason holding the bottle, his grin wide and predatory, Becca snapping a photo with her phone, probably for another humiliating post on X, Tyler and Jake closing in from the sides. They were boxing her in, and there was no way out. But Ellie wasn't just a farm girl. She'd grown up wrestling calves twice her size, hauling water buckets in blizzards, and fixing tractors with nothing but a wrench and her own stubborn will. She'd learned to think fast, to stay calm when the world was falling apart. And right now, her mind was racing. The lot wasn't completely empty. There was an old shed in the corner, its door hanging loose on rusted hinges. She'd passed it 100 times, never thought much of it, but now it was her only chance. "You want me to drink?" she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. Mason blinked, surprised she'd spoken at all. "Yeah, farm girl," he said, holding out the bottle. "Chug it, or we'll make you." Ellie took a step toward the shed, her eyes locked on his. Fine, she said, but not here. Let's go in there. She nodded toward the shed, her voice calm, almost inviting. The bullies exchanged glances, confused but intrigued. What was she planning? Would you have trusted her in that moment? Or would you have smelled a trap? Stick around, because this is where things take a turn. The shed was a relic from the town's old fairgrounds, its wooden walls splintered and gray, the air inside thick with dust, and the faint smell of oil. Ellie stepped inside first, her boots echoing on the creaky floor. The others followed, Mason still clutching the bottle, Becca filming with her phone, Tyler and Jake snickering behind her. The door creaked shut, plunging them into a dim haze of light filtering through cracked windows. Ellie's heart was a drum in her chest, but her face gave nothing away. She'd spent years learning to hide her fear, from storms that threatened the crops, from creditors who threatened the farm, from kids like these who thought they could break her. So, she said, turning to face them, her voice low. You want to play games? Mason laughed, but there was a nervous edge to it. What's this, farm girl? You think you're tough now? Ellie didn't answer. Instead, she moved fast. In one fluid motion, she grabbed a rusted rake leaning against the wall and swung it, not at them, but at the shelf above their heads. A cascade of old paint cans and tools crashed down, narrowly missing Mason's head. He yelped, stumbling back, and the bottle shattered on the floor, soaking his sneakers in cheap whiskey. The others froze, their laughter dying in their throats. Ellie stood tall, the rake still in her hands, her eyes blazing. You think I'm weak, she said, her voice cutting through the silence. You think I'm just some farm girl you can push around? I've been carrying my family's weight since I was 10. What have you ever carried, Mason? Her words hit like a slap, and for the first time, Mason's smirk faltered. Becca's phone was still recording, but her hands were shaking. Tyler took a step back, his bravado gone. Jake looked like he wanted to bolt. But Ellie wasn't done. She stepped forward, the rake still in her grip, and the bullies flinched. You've got one chance, she said. Apologize. Now, or I show you what a farm girl can really do. Would you have apologized right then, or would you have pushed her further? Comment below. Because what happens next is a moment you won't believe. Mason laughed, but it was forced hollow. You're crazy, he said, trying to regain control. You think you scare us? He took a step toward her, his fists clenched. But Ellie didn't back down. She'd faced worse than him. Cows that could crush her, storms that could ruin everything, a father who'd walked out when she was 12, leaving her to help her mom keep the farm alive. Mason was nothing. She swung the rake again, this time stopping it inches from his chest. Try me, she said, her voice low and deadly. The shed felt smaller now, the air thick with tension. Becca dropped her phone, the screen cracking on the floor. Tyler was muttering something about leaving, but Mason's pride wouldn't let him back down. You're nothing, he spat. Just a dirty little. He didn't finish. Ellie moved faster than anyone expected, dropping the rake and grabbing a coil of old rope from the corner. In seconds, she'd looped it around Mason's wrists, using a knot she'd learned for tying calves. He struggled, but she was stronger, her hands steady from years of farm work. Sit, she said, shoving him onto a crate. He fell hard, his face pale. The others didn't move. Becca was crying now, her mascara streaking. Tyler looked like he might faint. Jake was already halfway to the door, but Ellie's voice stopped him cold. You leave, and I tell everyone what cowards you are, she said. You think this town loves you. They'll eat this up. She pulled out her own phone, not to record, but to show them a photo, a screenshot of Becca's ex-post from last week, mocking Ellie with a cow emoji. I've got more, Ellie said. Every post, every text, every time you thought you were untouchable. You want the whole school to see. Becca sobbed harder, shaking her head. Please, Ellie, I'm sorry, she whispered. Tyler nodded frantically. Yeah, me too, okay? Let's just go. But Mason was still glaring, his pride wounded more than his body. You'll regret this, he hissed. Ellie leaned in close, her voice a whisper. No, Mason, you will. What do you think she meant by that? Was she bluffing, or did she have something bigger planned? Stick around, because the real twist is coming. Ellie let them go, but not before making them delete every cruel post, every photo, every trace of their campaign against her. She stood by the shed door, the rope still in her hands, watching as they stumbled out into the dusk. Mason's face was a mix of rage and humiliation, but he didn't say a word. Becca was still crying. Tyler muttering apologies, Jake silent and pale. The lot was quiet now, the air heavy with the weight of what had happened. Ellie didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. She felt tired, like she'd been carrying the farm's weight all over again. But something had shifted inside her. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small. She walked home, the sunset painting the fields gold, her boots steady on the familiar path. At the farm, her mom was waiting, her face lined with worry. "You're late," she said, but Ellie just hugged her, something she hadn't done in a long time. "I'm okay," she whispered. "I'm more than okay." The next day at school, the air was different. Whispers followed Ellie, but they weren't cruel now. They were curious, odd. Word had spread, not from Becca's phone, but from Jake, who'd cracked under pressure and told a friend what had happened in the shed. By lunch, the story had ground. Ellie Carter, the farm girl, had taken down the untouchable Mason Reed. Kids stared as she walked by, some with respect, others with fear. Mason avoided her eyes, his usual swagger gone. Becca didn't show up to school. Tyler and Jake kept their distance. Ellie didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She walked taller, her braids swinging, her eyes bright with possibility. But the story wasn't over. That night, Ellie sat at the kitchen table, her laptop open. She'd been working on something for weeks, something she hadn't told anyone about. It was an essay, one she'd poured her heart into, about growing up on the farm, about the strength it took to keep going when the world seemed against you. She'd submitted it to a national scholarship contest, one that could pay for college, a dream her family could never afford. As she refreshed her email, her heart stopped. There it was, a message from the contest board. She'd won. Full ride, anywhere she wanted to go. Tears stung her eyes as she read the words, her mom's hand squeezing hers across the table. "You did it," her mom whispered. "You're unstoppable." Ellie smiled, the same smile she'd worn in the shed. A smile that said she was done being small. But the victory in the shed and the scholarship were only the beginning of Ellie's transformation. That weekend, she walked the fields of Carter Farm, the place that had shaped her, broken her, and made her whole again. The farm was more than land. It was her legacy, her battleground, her heart. As she stood among the grazing cows, the wind tugging at her braid, she thought about the years of struggle, the drought that nearly bankrupted them, the creditors who circled like vultures, the father who left without a goodbye. Each hardship had carved a piece of her, but it had also forged her into something unbreakable. She remembered the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, hearing Mason's taunts in her head, feeling like she'd never escape Willow Creek. But now, she saw a future. College, a chance to study agricultural science, to innovate and save farms like hers from disappearing. She knelt in the dirt, pressing her hands into the soil, and made a silent promise she'd fight for this land, for her mom, for every kid who felt small in a big world. Back at the house, she found an old journal, its pages yellowed from years, in a drawer. She began to write, not just about the shed or the bullies, but about the fire inside her, the one that had always been there, waiting to roar. She wrote about the scholarship, about her dreams, about the strength she'd found in the unlikeliest of places. And then, in a moment of courage, she did something she'd never done before. She posted a snippet of her story on X, not to shame anyone, but to inspire. "You don't have to be loud to be strong," she wrote. "Sometimes, the quiet ones have the loudest hearts." By morning, her post had gone viral in Willow Creek, shared by kids who'd never spoken to her, by teachers who'd never noticed her, by farmers who saw their own struggles in her words. Ellie wasn't just the farm girl anymore. She was a voice, a force, a spark that lit up the town. What would you do with a moment like that? Would you share your story, or keep it close? Comment below, because Ellie's courage is just the start of what's possible. The bullies never bothered her again. Mason's reign as king of Willow Creek High faded, his charm tarnished by whispers of the shed. Becca transferred schools. Tyler and Jake kept their distance. Ellie didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She walked taller, her braids swinging, her eyes bright with possibility. The farm was still struggling, but Ellie had plans. College, a degree in agricultural science, a way to save her family's land and others like it. She'd turned her pain into power, her fear into fire. And in Willow Creek, the legend of the farm girl grew, a story whispered in halls and fields, a reminder that even the quiet ones can roar. So, what do you think? Was Ellie's revenge justified, or did she go too far? Have you ever stood up to a bully and turned the tables? Comment below and let me know, because your story might inspire someone else. And if you love this tale of redemption and strength, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Until next time, keep fighting your battles. You never know when you'll make the bullies cry for mercy.